Detroit Pistons have received permission to interview Milwaukee Bucks assistant Charles Lee for the franchise head coaching job. Sources tell ESPN Lee is considered one of the significant candidates in the Pistons search. I am convinced, and I'm very excited for Charles Lee. I think he is the guy that gets the head coaching job for the Detroit Pistons. I think coming over from Milwaukee, where they use three bigs, Giannis, Brook Lopez, and Bobby Portis, and they have won with those, that is significant in what the Detroit Pistons are trying to do and still play two bigs, starting two bigs, I mean. So I think that's the biggest caveat on why Charles Lee is the number one candidate. But, I mean, what are your thoughts on Charles Lee's in the head coach? You think he's the guy or do you have someone else?
I think if you look at the names during the tweets from Woj and Shams, there are two names that you should pay attention to. Charles Lee and Chris Quinn.
Okay.
I think those are the two coaches that it'll probably come down to. I don't know if they're going to interview Udoka. They probably will, just for doing their due diligence. But I think if you look at Charles Lee, he's been with Bud all the way back from the Atlanta days. When you remember that Atlanta team that was the number one seed, got swept by LeBron. They had Jeff Teague, Kyle Korver, DeMarre Carroll, Paul Millsap, and Al Horford. Very proud of myself for remembering that starting five, by the way. But he's been with Bud for quite a while. He got upgraded to associate coach with Coach Bud. So he took Darvin Ham's role, obviously. He is coaching with the Lakers. So I think he's earned his stripes and is doing more research on him. He's one of those guys that is all about the film, all about development, all about, getting players better. I think listening to Troy's press conference, he said that the head coaching candidates we're looking for development, we're looking for defense, and we're looking to get better every day. And that checks the box with Charles Lee, and it checks the box with Chris Quinn as well.
I do like Chris Quinn. He is the guy that I want. And I don't know much about his coaching. I just know that he comes from Eric Spoelstra. He's going to bring that Heat culture. I love what they're doing in the Heat, down in Miami. I think it's great. So Chris Quinn, he's my second candidate. I do think it's Charles Lee, though. I'd be willing to put, if I'm a gambling man, I'm willing to put a good amount of money in not my life savings. I hate when people say that, but let's just say I'm going with $1,000. I'm putting 90% out on Charles Lee becoming the head coach. You know what I'm saying? That's how much faith I have in Charles Lee becoming the head coach. Just again, because he's coming from, like you're saying, he comes from Milwaukee. He was under Bud. He became the assistant head coach. He had been interviewing for two jobs, including the Lakers job last year, which ultimately they gave to Darvin Ham. So he's been around the NBA, and he's been talked about. I believe he's a hot candidate to become the next head coach for an NBA team. I think it's going to be in Detroit. Chris Quinn, again, I'll just briefly say it again. I like the Heat culture. I like that he comes from Eric Spoelstra. I like that he's a former player. I think former players being coaches, that is invaluable, especially to a young team like Detroit, because they can help them navigate the NBA waters. I think that's important. It's like having a veteran. It's like having a veteran, that you don't have to take a roster spot on your team, because he's at the beginning of the bench. It's great. So I think it's definitely those two candidates. What about you? How much money would you put down? You have $1,000. How much of that are you putting down on Charles Lee becoming that coach?
I don't know if I would put that much. I think I don't know. I like Charles Lee a lot because if you think about it, Bud came from the pop tree, and he's probably teaching the same things. If I did have to put a dollar figure, I don't know. I'd probably put 200 on Charles Lee and 200 on Quinn, because I think it's 50-50, because we'll get into Chris Quinn in a minute. I think Chris Quinn, talking to Heat fans, when I saw Chris Haynes tweet that Chris Quinn was going to interview for the job, so many Heat fans, dude, they were so upset. They're like, hell no. Because he's supposed to take over the reins when Spo wants to retire. He's next in line to be the next Heat coach.
Okay.
Talking to some Heat fans and people that do, write articles for the Miami Heat, they say, he's an up and coming, coaching star, much like Charles Lee. So I think it's going to be between both of those guys. But man, if I had you just flip a coin, because both of these guys are great coaches.